Hello everybody, Jan Michael here, just got back from seeing War for the Planet of the Apes. This is the third film in the now trilogy that started all the way back in 2011 with Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, and then in 2014 with Rise of the Planet of the Apes. Now we're at War. So with the first film, I thought it was a very solid movie, and I didn't think it was anything too amazing, but I enjoyed it and I looked forward to seeing where the series was going next. With Rise of the Planet of the Apes, it definitely went above and beyond. It ended up being one of my favorite films of the year, and so naturally I was excited to see the third film in the installment. So now that I've gotten back from checking it out, it's time to ask the question, does War for the Planet of the Apes suck? Well, let's find out. The film picks up right from where the last one left off. There are soldiers hunting the apes down. Caesar's conflicted with the choices that he had to make at the end of the last film, and due to certain actions that take place at the beginning of this movie, Caesar and a couple of the other apes are pretty much on a mission to track down Woody Harrelson's character, who is pretty much the leader of these soldiers that are hunting the apes down. There's something really odd that happens when it comes to trilogies. I don't know why, but this seems to happen a lot. For whatever reason, the first film in the series ends up being pretty good. Maybe nothing too amazing, but a solid flick. Then when the second one comes out, it ends up being mind-blowingly amazing. And maybe it becomes that way because the first film was just good. Nothing on the scope of the second one. And so when they really try to push the second one above and beyond what the series can be, you tend to be surprised by that. But now with the expectations so high, you go into the third one with those expectations, and if it doesn't deliver, you tend to be disappointed. Maybe the film isn't bad, but you were expecting a little bit more. So does War for the Planet of the Apes fall into this? No, not really. War for the Planet of the Apes is a solid flick. The second is still my favorite in the trilogy, but that doesn't mean that this one is bad or terrible by any means. It is a strong film, and one that I'm going to be recommending, so if you guys are scared about what I'm gonna say here, not to worry, this is a good review. Let's start off with the good. Andy Serkis as Caesar. I said this after watching the last film, and I gotta say it right now for an audience. He deserves an Oscar nomination. This guy is great. He knows how to handle every role he's cast in. He's amazing. He knows the movements for Caesar. He knows the body language, the facial features. He is Caesar. He makes that character. And he definitely deserves some sort of recognition here for his role as Caesar. While in the first two films, Caesar was more maybe like a side character or a sort of a character that was like a co-host to another person that the story was following. This one, he is front and center. The story follows him from beginning to end, and he carries the film. And so Andy Serkis really had to push himself even further to get to that point where, like, you're gonna be following his character. Like, he's your main character, so he has to go above and beyond, and he delivers. So Andy Serkis, a huge plus in the film. And it's not just him either. There's other people that had to get into costume, that had to get in the green suits of effect on there just so they can play their roles. And they all handle the job amazingly. The orangutan, the gorillas, pretty much anybody. Like, there's not a single ape that just feels out of place. Whatever they were doing with the people that had to mimic the movements, mimic the actions, they did a fantastic job. Just kudos to the directing on the film. The soundtrack is fantastic as well. It's something that really stuck with me as I watched the film. And it's funny because I don't remember the soundtrack being too memorable in the first two films. I don't remember it being bad either, but it was definitely not something that I paused and said, man, that music. This time I did. There's a lot of times where a scene will start with this very strong music and it catches your attention. And so the music is definitely something that I think is a huge plus here. Plus, like, the emotional scenes here work well. Now, not every scene, and I'm actually going to go into that in more of the negative part of it, but the scenes that are the emotional highs of the film hit just right. I'm not going to ruin what those scenes are, but definitely get ready to get some feels in there while you're watching the movie. With these types of film, you also have to talk about the special effects. Obviously, there's people that are wearing all these costumes to mimic the apes, but in the end, it's all special effects. You have to really create these apes through computer processing, all that stuff. And it's just impressive. They've been impressive since the beginning. The second film really, again, as I said, kicked it up a notch, and it just continues here. And these things look like they're on screen. They look like they're there. Usually when you're watching a film where an actor has to interact with something that isn't really there, it can kind of seem a little bit clunky at points, or if you really start to like look into it, you start to notice the cracks in the facade. But I didn't really feel any of that there. There's times where they're talking to each other where people are being attacked and they all respond just right. It looks like they're talking to each other. This is very, very impressive. If not Andy Serkis, I'm sure this is going to get some sort of nomination for the visual effects because it is fantastic. Definitely one of the strongest that I've seen. I mean, every year they push the envelope with special effects every single year. And man, this is the first film this year that I think I am very, very impressed with when it comes to the visual effects. I gotta say, I'm really struggling with what to say negatively about the film. Okay, actually, there are two things that I have to talk about that I think are negative points about it, and I don't mean to, like, these aren't gonna be like ruiners for the film or anything like that. This doesn't bring the film down in any way. It's still very enjoyable. But two things that I definitely have to talk about. First and foremost, Woody Harrelson's character. Now, Woody Harrelson is not bad. He works the role as best he can, and he's a great actor, and he does a fantastic job. But his role as the antagonist is really just your generic military, like, stone-faced guy that is willing to do whatever it takes to get the job done. Now, they try to introduce a backstory to him at one point, but I gotta be honest, I just wasn't feeling it. They really didn't go into too much of an emotional moment in those scenes. Maybe if we had seen what he talks about, like the actions that he had to take, maybe that would have been a bit more of an impact and made the character a little bit more likable, or I mean a little bit more not generic. But for what they gave us, it didn't quite do the job for me. Definitely one of the weaker bad guys in the series. The second thing I had a problem with, and I have to go into spoilers here, and I know this is the second time I'm doing this, and I don't want to have a spoiler section in my videos just because I hate ruining films for people. That's something that I don't like to do ever. But it's something that I do have to talk about in order to get my point across of why I think, why the film isn't perfect, why the flaws in it. So bear with me, guys. I promise I'm not going to try to do this every single time. But if you don't want the movie spoiled, skip to this time code and go. Okay, so there's a couple of really weak emotional moments, and there's two that I'm actually going to talk about. For the most part, there are great emotional moments. There are scenes where there's revelations that are mentioned, and man, just as I said, like the computer generation mixed with the actors playing these apes, just like they make you feel for them. You think it'd be ridiculous how you're gonna feel sorry for the apes, but they do it. They do a fantastic job. But it's not perfect. And the first example of that I'm gonna give is during a scene towards, I'd say, the end of the first act of the film, where there's this girl who is a big part of the story, and she is kind of like has to travel with Caesar and the other apes. And she doesn't really talk to any of them, or she can't talk to any of them, I should say, but she's only really gotten close to the orangutan. And at one scene, like, this gorilla kind of plucks a flower from a tree and places it in her hair. And it's supposed to be a very nice, touching moment. And yeah, you know, it's nice. It's kind of like their first interaction. The problem is that almost immediately after, like the next scene or the scene right afterwards, that gorilla ends up getting killed. And she hands the flower back to him, and she's crying, and it's supposed to be a very tear-jerking moment, but you didn't really get enough character development between the two to really get a feel for her missing this character. If they had maybe built it up a little bit more, where she was scared of him at first and then started easing into it and showed it throughout multiple scenes throughout the beginning half of the film, it would have left a more emotional punch. But jumping from that one scene to the next, it really didn't quite do it for me. And that's not the only example I could give. At the very beginning of the film, the reason that Caesar and the other apes go after Woody Harrelson is that Caesar's wife and oldest son is killed. And now these are big characters in the second film. Heck, they're in danger at points you think they might die in the second film. And those are really strong emotional moments. So I can understand why killing them off would be the driving force for Caesar to seek revenge. But the problem is that if you go into this film and you haven't seen the last film in quite some time, you might not be as emotionally attached to them as you might have been if you had just come out of the second film. So I think a little bit more build-up with these characters would have been enough to remember why you like them in the first place, or why they're important. Now, that's not to say that the scene was handled poorly. It was directed great. The shots of the tragic moments were done just how they should have been. They just needed a little bit more time. And there are a couple of other moments like this throughout the film. Now again, that's not to say the film doesn't have emotional moments. It does. It has some great emotional moments. But it's not perfect. It's not consecutive throughout the film. There are weaker moments than others, and of course there are strong moments as well.
This is our last stand. And if we lose...
So, does War for the Planet of the Apes suck? No, it is a very strong film, guys. I would definitely recommend going and check it out. Again, it's not my favorite out of the 3 films that have come out. That still goes to the second one, which blew me away. But this is still a very, very strong film, as I said at the beginning of the video. It definitely needs to be watched. So no, it does not suck. But ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, that is up for you to decide. Let me know what you thought about the film if you've seen it down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching, guys. And on a bit of a side note, you may have noticed that I put up a review for Annie Hall. That's not new at all. What the fuck's that doing up there? So, this is a project that I've been wanting to do for the longest time, which was review every single film that ever won Best Picture at the Oscars. It's something that, man, I've been thinking about for years and years, and now that I finally started up my YouTube channel, I didn't hesitate. I jumped right in. I don't think anybody's attempted this yet. I've been looking up videos to see if anybody has, and as far as I can tell, I'm the first. Maybe I'm wrong. You can call me out on that. But yeah, it's just something that I've seen all the films before, but you know, I just kind of wanted to make videos just to kind of prove that I have, and just reviewing them. It's gonna be fun. It's very story based. So guys, I hope you go check out that video as well. Thank you so much for the support. It means so much to me. I'm happy that I'm finally able to do these videos. It's something, man, yeah, that I've been planning for the longest time and finally getting out there. So once again, thank you so much for watching, guys, and until next time, have a good one.
It will be a planet of apes.